Welcome to the Practical NLP podcast with me, Andy Smith. Catch up on previous episodes at nlppod.com. Welcome to the Practical NLP podcast, and my guest today is certainly a leading NLP trainer who I haven't seen for about 15 years, since I last actually met you in the flesh, Doug. It's Mr. Doug O'Brien, Ericksonian hypnosis expert, coaching expert, NLP trainer, and I don't know what else actually. Do you want to say what else
that's enough.
Yeah.
that's plenty.
Okay.
I plant trees well. I've planted a few trees in my day. Just recently, actually, a few days ago, planted a new tree. I play the piano. I'm a piano player. Used to be a musician, a professional musician. I made money playing music. I didn't, never got rich doing it, but
Yeah, I've heard you sing as well. So yeah.
Oh my God. Lucky you.
Yeah, on the training course where you were describing a scene, or actually acting out a scene in the movie Cabaret. I think. Yeah.
The highlight of the sleight of mouth class, right there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's.
That was the highlight of my sleight of mouth class. Thanks a lot. But...
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't sing it. We're not really going for the Nazi audience on this podcast, anyway. Doug, maybe we should. I will be asking you what you're doing now, actually, but let's start with the NLP, because that's the context in which I met you originally. How did you get into NLP originally?
Oh my God. So how I got into NLP originally was this. I was minding my own business, being a professional musician in New York. And when I say professional, it means I made money doing it. I played little venues and taught piano, and I was a church organist, and basically do whatever I could to make ends meet. I was in a band. And then this person came to town named Tony Robbins, that my girlfriend at the time was interested in attending his seminar, so she did. And at the time, his method of marketing was basically kind of based on the forum or the est thing, so that if people went to the seminar, then they would be encouraged to bring their friends and family to the next one. So of course, I was encouraged to come to the next one when he came back a few months later. So she sort of basically threatened and cajoled and variously persuaded me to go to this thing that I literally had no interest in doing, this firewalk thing by this brash 24-year-old kid back in 1985. But I did. I went, and I was shocked actually at how cool it was, and this NLP stuff that he was teaching, because that's what he did, by the way. Tony Robbins was an NLP trainer at the time, and the firewalk experience was an introduction to NLP, a demonstration really that you could do amazing things like walk across hot burning coals if you used these strategies from NLP. So it was very, very cool, and I wanted to learn more. So I did. I did the whole weekend, and then I went, and a year later I got certified in NLP from Tony Robbins. It was a very intensive 15-day training. And he brought people like Richard Bandler and Robert Dilts and Tad James and Wyatt Woodsmall and Dave Dobson to do a day or two.
This was back when all the kind of big figures in NLP were still talking to each other and working together then, by the sound of it.
I think mostly. At this point in time, I think Bandler and Grinder had kind of parted ways. In 1986, 87, they kind of split up. So they weren't always talking real nice. But they were still around. Everybody was still teaching NLP and things. And so, yeah, I was introduced to those guys at the Tony Robbins seminar, and decided, well, gosh, if they're good enough for Tony, they're good enough for me. So I wanted to learn more. In fact, I was kind of amazed that these people were actually the ones that created NLP, and Tony Robbins took it from them. So I said, oh, okay, then I really do need to learn it from them. And I went and took trainings from Robert Dilts and from Richard Bandler and Dave Dobson and Tad James and Wyatt Woodsmall, and anybody basically who was, teaching me something that sounded interesting, I would go and study with them. So I've got actually a wall full of certifications and practitioner and master practitioner and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so it's kind of took over my life without my intending it to. By 1990, I was doing it full time.
So you were using it professionally at this point?
Yeah, it sort of segued into it. I was still playing music. I was still teaching piano lessons. I was still teaching at the Brooklyn Conservatory. But I also started doing sessions with people where they'd say, can you help me quit smoking? I said, sure. So I'd do those kinds of things and discover it paid well. I'd have to, do a full day of teaching or a week of teaching piano lessons to little kids to, do one session for 2 hours and get somebody to be very happily quitting smoking, very, very happy and, singing my praises and paying me $200. I think this is good.
Yeah, that's back when $200 was $200, right?
It was actually not $200. It was like $100 maybe, or 50 or 75, but still it was good money.
Nevertheless, yeah.
1990. So yeah, that's how I segued into doing this, and I've been doing it ever since.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna drop an appreciative question on you now. Tell us about one of your best experiences of NLP.
Wow, there are so many that it's very, very difficult to answer that question, but I can answer with how would you know it's not? Because there are so many. I could just pick one, say this is the best thing that ever happened, and you'd believe me probably. But seriously, back in the early days of NLP, when I was working with Tony Robbins, he would have us do things that were pretty extreme, just to show us that we could. So as an example, during the NLP certification course, he would give all the participants there a quarter, which is how much it cost to make a phone call back in those days. Pay phones, which were these things where you could actually put money into a phone that was connected by wires to other phones, and you could dial a number. You've heard of pay phones, right?
Yeah, we had them in the UK where they largely doubled as public toilets as well.
My recollection of being in England is they didn't work very well either.
No.
So they're probably better as public toilets than they were as payphones. I'm just saying, I don't know. But anyway, he gave everybody a quarter and an apple and a map of the area. And he'd say, okay, now give me your wallet and your credit cards and your room keys for the hotels that we were staying in. And we'd have to leave the premises for 24 hours and survive out there by our wits. That was his way of showing us that we could, in fact, do that. And so, yeah, I had some very, very interesting experiences, attempting to survive for 24 hours with the quarter and the map, and did very well. I went to a mall and started doing some NLP, sessions with people in the mall. I went to Sedona, Arizona, which wasn't too far away from where we were holding this thing, and climbed to the top of this butte, which was pretty awesome experience, actually. Had a very, it wasn't an NLP experience, but it was a very impactful experience for me to be on top of this butte and, experience what the word awe really means. The word awesome is, I think, used far too frequently, because, oh man, that's such an awesome dessert. It's like, no, it's not actually. It may be delicious, but it's not awesome. Because the word awesome, when you're filled with awe, when you just are struck with this experience of, I can't speak, that's what the word is all about.
Yeah.
And I experienced that at the top of this butte, sort of being cast back in time and experiencing the dinosaurs that probably walked this land when it had been the bottom of a seafloor that had been thrust up 63 million years ago and was a dense forest. Because when I was climbing up this butte, there were strata of sedimentary rock. Climbing up this butte, there are strata of sedimentary rock with these amazing looking fossils in them and stuff. It was amazing. So you realize that you were walking where these giants once walked, when it was a forest or a jungle. So that was pretty amazing. NLP has been remarkable. I've done NLP with the Research and Recognition Project, where we've helped veterans using, basically the NLP phobia cure with these guys who had just horrible war experiences or training camp experiences, whatever, but it's really true trauma and real true PTSD. And in 3 sessions, they would basically not have those symptoms anymore. They wouldn't be having the flashbacks and not having, the nightmares that had plagued them for decades in some cases. Some of these guys were Vietnam vets.
Yeah, I believe I've read some of the that research is starting to come through from this now, and it's finally a little bit of pushback about that idea that NLP is unscientific and there's no research to support it, and now there's starting to be some, which is
actual research,
which is great. Yeah. So lots of amazing experiences, and still going on by the sound of it. What do you wish you'd known when you were starting out in NLP?
I wish I had known that Tony Robbins didn't make it up. Maybe wish I could have heard about it sooner, so that I'd gotten back even further into the history of it. If it would have been awesome actually to meet Milton Erickson as an example. I compare my notes to this life in the 70s with people like Robert Dilts and Stephen Gilligan. We're approximately the same age, but while I was attending music school, they were attending UC Santa Cruz and taking classes with Gregory Bateson and Virginia Satir, and traveling over to Phoenix to work with Erickson. It's that would have been pretty neat. wish I had known about that back in the 70s.
Yeah, so this is it seems like the conditions were in place there to allow some amazing things to happen. Either that, or that university was exceptionally lucky that it happened to have so many incredibly talented people in one place at one time. I think the environment makes a difference, I think.
I think both things are true. The environment definitely does make a difference, and they were incredibly lucky. I mean, of course, the university was lucky. Gregory Bateson probably would have been as brilliant as he was no matter where he went, and he probably would have influenced quite a few people no matter what university he was at. So there would have been, maybe if he'd have been at my university, I'd be the Stephen Gilligans and the Robert Diltses of the world. I don't know, probably not.
Yeah. So you've mentioned Milton Erickson before. I kind of know you partly as an Ericksonian hypnosis teacher and specialist. In fact, your website is called Ericksonian.something, right? .org, is it? .com. Okay.
Ericksonian.com. Yeah, actually, I have 2 websites that have that moniker. It's Ericksonian.com and Ericksonian.info. And the .info site is actually very, very neat. It's got a lot of info. Hence the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It has a lot of interviews and articles and stuff. It's a great website. So yeah, I never met Milton. I went to his house though, and met his wife, Betty. She showed me around, and I met his daughter, who wasn't there. I met her later at a different time, Betty Alice. So I've been around, and yeah, I like to think of myself as somewhat of a well-versed Ericksonian hypnotherapist, although I never, like I said, met Milton. But yeah, I learned my first foray into hypnosis after recognizing that NLP was built on Ericksonian hypnosis was with this guy named Dave Dobson, who was not, as it turns out, an Ericksonian. He had learned, he developed his own sort of style, which is very parallel, very similar to Erickson's, but didn't learn from Erickson. He did that himself. And so he did meet Erickson once. They talked. He attended one of his workshops, I think, but he wasn't per se an Ericksonian. So when I was learning from Dave, I was thinking I was learning Ericksonian hypnosis, but it turned out I wasn't exactly learning the same thing. So that's one of the reasons these days when I talk about what I do, I refer to it more as neo-Ericksonian hypnosis, because I learned from Erickson's students mostly,
Right.
Gilligan and O'Hanlon and Zeig and those folks. And a lot of NLP, which is derived from Ericksonian hypnosis, but isn't really Ericksonian hypnosis. It's Bandler's version of it, or
Yeah.
Grinder's version of it, or Dobson's, or Diltz's version of it. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. Neo-Ericksonian seems to make more sense.
Yeah, which is interesting, because sometimes when you see on like forums and Facebook groups and so on, somebody asks, what's the best NLP training practitioner course I could go on? And of course, everyone says their own course that they've been on. Or if they're a trainer, sometimes they just say, oh yeah, my course, even though I live in a different country from you, and it's staggeringly expensive and so on. But very often they say, well, you need to go back to the source. You need to go to either Bandler or Grinder. But a lot of the guys they trained, a lot of the people they trained, added some extras to it as well. It's not like what you're getting is a watered down version necessarily. It could be a version with some extra bits added that actually make it better and stronger.
Yeah. No, if I were to answer that question, I would not. Gosh, do I want to say this out loud? Okay, I've started in for a dime, in for a dollar. I would not recommend Bandler or Grinder to learn NLP if you were going to do that these days. I don't think they're certainly capable of teaching great seminars, but I don't think they do teach great seminars these days. It's been an unfortunate truth that seminars have gotten shorter and shorter. And, I know that back in the day, I wasn't there, but back in the day before I was there in the NLP world, they taught 28-day certification trainings. Practitioner course was 28 days long. The one I took from Tony Robbins was 15 days, and I took several others that were 15 or 14-day long. The ones I've been teaching for the past few years are 14-day trainings.
Yeah.
And just frankly, you need that much time, at least, to do it. Probably would be better if you did a 28-day training. But people aren't doing that. People are doing 6-day trainings or 5-day trainings, and it just, you can't get it done. I don't think you can get it done.
I think there's one guy in the world who's still doing like 28 or 26-day trainings, which is James Sakalos in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Who was actually the first guest I had on this podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's somehow, I guess his reputation is such that he can actually still attract students, even though his course is like 4 times longer than everyone else's. Yeah.
Twice as long as mine, but still, quite long. And what about Richard Bolstad? Does he teach a long day?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that there's a home study element, and I think his may come in around the 14 mark. I do need to actually, now I'm doing this podcast again, I need to get him on as a guest, but the time difference with New Zealand is absolutely horrendous where I am. So maybe I'll have to try and catch him if he comes abroad to train.
Well, I don't know if he's traveling too much right now, but
right now he's not. No, I'm sure he's not. He's really got into virtual trainings, I think. So proving it can be done. My next kind of standard question, you may have answered it already, I'm not sure, is what are you really excited about in NLP or perhaps elsewhere right now?
That's a really great question. And the answer really, truly, honestly, is that I'm not interested or excited about NLP per se.
Right? Okay, what are you excited about now?
What I'm excited about is coaching, which is an application of NLP. I'm looking to how we take the tools from NLP and really just sort of say, what are the essential ones? What are the skills that are essential for helping to change somebody's life in as effectively a process as you can? So what are the coaching skills that are essential for helping a person to get from point A to point B, but not just, because you know the strictures of how to do it, but in a creative, generative way that maybe will take them, to point Z as well. because they've just discovered so much about them. So, putting them into practice. So I'm not teaching NLP certification courses anymore. I'm teaching what I call neo-Ericksonian hypnosis, but it's sort of combining the Ericksonian principles with the NLP things that are useful, and then some other things that I've learned along the way as well that aren't necessarily either one of them, like as an example from Dave Dobson or Stephen Gilligan. People are expanding and growing these works. So Erickson might not recognize it anymore if we're doing those same things now. But I think they're really, useful, really valuable for people. So that's what I'm excited about. And there's this other thing that I do now called behaviouring techniques, which also I'm finding a great deal of power in, that really helps people change very rapidly and organically in a very, true to themselves way, which is pretty
Okay. So is that something that you could sort of show us a bit of or describe a bit of, perhaps something that, because I like for my listeners to get some sort of little tip or technique that they can try out with themselves from listening to each podcast.
I bet you, I would imagine that most people listening have at least heard of it by now, behaviouring techniques. So just, if they haven't, let me just tell you real quick.
Yeah, but please, for my benefit too, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Paul McKenna, whom I'm sure you know, British hypnotist, told this American doctor about tapping once. They were friends, and he just said, "Hey, I read this book about this tapping stuff." I said, "Oh, really? I've never heard of that. What book is that? Can I read it?" So, American doctor named Ron Rudin got hold of the book about tapping, about Roger Callahan, and was reading it one day in his office when one of his co-doctors said, "Hey, what you reading?" He said, "Oh, I'm reading this book about taking away phobias and stuff." He said, "Oh, I've got a phobia." I said, "Oh, you want to try this?" He said, "Sure, let's try it." So they sat down, and Ron just opened the page, the book on tapping away phobias, and they did it, and it worked. And the guy's cat phobia went away in like 10 minutes. So Dr. Rudin thought, "Oh, well, this is interesting. I don't buy into the quote unquote science behind why it works, but clearly it did work." And so he kept trying it on. Every time a patient would come in for a checkup that day, he said, "By the way, do you have a phobia about anything?" And they would do another phobia whenever he had a chance. And they all worked. So this got his attention. He said, "Okay, I need to find out why this works." And long story short, and I'm going to tell really a long story short, is he found out why. He found out that when touch, whether it's applied by stroking, which is what we do in the Havening techniques, on the forehead or the cheeks, sort of just a nice, comfortable feeling, and also on the arms from the shoulders down to the elbows, that sensation creates delta waves in the brain.
Okay.
The body is an electrical chemical organism, and the sensation is transduced to an electrical chemical signal that goes to the brain in the form of a delta wave. Delta waves in turn change the brain chemistry by producing oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine and GABA, and basically it changes the whole way we feel because of the delta waves that are there.
Is this something people can try out for themselves? Is there like a...
There are a variety of videos online that one can see. You can go to havening.org and find out more information about it. It's probably the best source. I have a few videos on my own website on ericksonian.com or Doug O'Brien Hypnosis that would probably have some. But you can just go to havening.org because my videos are there too.
Okay, well, I will link to yours in the show notes.
Okay. And yeah, basically, if a person wants to try it on for size, there's basically two ways we use havening. One is to get rid of the traumas or the phobias that have been encoded in the brain from a past experience. Process we call event havening, and that's usually, we recommend that's usually done with a practitioner who's going to help guide you through that. But the process is deceptively simple. You basically you allow the feeling to come up by remembering it. So you recall the event, and so when you start feeling the fear or feeling the anxiety, that means basically that the receptors in the amygdala that cause that response have become potentiated, so they're activated, and they're basically therefore available to be changed. And then when you do the delta
Yeah.
wave prediction,
Because if you weren't doing that, right, then it wouldn't have any effect because it wouldn't be related to the experience.
right. So this is the way we sort of target the therapy, is we have these AMP receptors get potentiated, so now they're exposed, and then when we do the delta waves, those chemicals get in there and affect that. So we take away the effect. It's remarkable. The thing that I love about it really is Dr. Rudin did about 8 years of research into like why this was working before he told anybody about it, except for his twin brother, Steve. So, you know, this is well-researched, real stuff. This isn't just sort of some woo thing that somebody decided, hey, if we do this, it's going to work. This actually has got some science behind it that keeps growing. It's you got neuroscientists involved now. I mean, Dr. Rudin was an MD and a PhD in organic chemistry, but nevertheless, he could do research. So he was doing this stuff very accurately. Anyway, the other way that we very, in a sense, very easily do havening is to create a positive future.
Right.
So because when you do this touch on your arms and face, really, I think also pretty much any place above the neckline that feels good, you're going to get delta waves. I often do it over the top of my head. You get a flood, really, of dopamine and serotonin and GABA and oxytocin. It feels really, really nice. But there's a part of the brain called hippocampus, which is right next to the amygdala, which is where you create new memories. And that requires serotonin to create the new memories and consolidate them out to the larger cerebral cortex in the process called memory consolidation. So what we can do basically is like an NLP future pacing. We visualize what we want to have be true. We see ourselves being that way in this visualization, and we say to ourselves things like, I can do this. I have every resource I need to do this. I'm going to do it now. I'm doing it now. And you do that while you're doing the havening touch on your arms. You do that while you're doing the havening touch on your face. You just take 5 minutes and do that and visualize and talk to yourself that way. And it really is nice. To me, it's like affirmations on steroids. You know, because your hippocampus is getting flooded with the serotonin and seeing these pictures and hearing these sounds, and it's like, yeah, I remember that. You know, it's like creating this memory. In NLP, it's like taking a changed personal history and, you know, saying, yes, this is real now. Yeah. It's very, very strong.
Except it's in the future.
Right.
But it makes that future credible, so you believe that you can get there, which I guess is a kind of prerequisite for actually doing something about it. Because if you don't believe you could get there, then why would you do anything?
Exactly. Yeah, it makes the futures real. It makes it like it's an actual thing, and you just have to take the steps to get there.
Okay, this is making me think now. I wonder if that could be combined with appreciative coaching.
No doubt.
Yeah, because one of the things we do there is people discover when things have worked in the past, even if only partially, and you can then take those things and put them in the future as the foundation for your future vision. So you're not starting with that terrifying blank sheet. And
that's perfect for that. And what's also cool about it is that when you're doing havening, it does bolt on so well with things that you already know how to do. You know, in a sense, it's kind of creating like the right brain chemistry to make that stuff set in there. So this is a kind of a brain chemistry model. And then the cognitive part, you know, it's a psychosensory therapy. It's both a sensory part from the touch, but it's also the psychosensory therapy. So yeah, we're perfect for that, the appreciative touch, appreciative inquiry.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to check out havening. I've never really looked at it because I was out of doing one-to-one therapy by the time it emerged, I think, mostly anyway. So I'm definitely going to go and have a look at that.
Right.
Okay, so my standard question would be, what are you doing with NLP now? It sounds like applying it to coaching rather than doing formal, this is NLP kind of training.
No, I'm not doing NLP trainings, that's for sure. Although in my essential coaching skills membership site, I do teach a lot of the NLP skills, but it's in the service of coaching. Right. So it's not just for fun. It's just because when you learn these particular skills, it makes the coaching better. And it also allows us to be better as coaches. So it's also, of course, doing, in a sense, what NLP has done for years, which is kind of self-therapy, if you will, making yourself a better person.
Yep.
And that's the way you need to be in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And, you know, that's neat. That's neat. It's interesting. The other day, because I'm up here at the country house away from my apartment in Brooklyn during this COVID-19, you know, self-isolation thing, I'm very fortunate that I have a pretty good piano up here. It's just upright, but nevertheless, it's a nice piano, and I have the opportunity to play it here. For a number of years in New York, I lived in a very, you know, for Brooklyn, nice apartment, but I lived on the upper floors and I couldn't have a piano up there.
Right.
So I never had a piano for years. Now I have one and I can play pretty much every day. And I thought I was getting pretty good. And then I was online with this thing. There was this online kind of meeting thing that happened, a Zoom conference thing. And a friend of mine was playing it, and he's just an outstandingly good jazz pianist. And I was thinking, oh, geez, I suck. I thought I was good, but I suck. But then I remembered NLP, and I thought, well, no, it's like if he can do it, I can do it. I just need to model that. So how is he moving? How is he breathing? How is he using his eyes? What kind of beliefs does he have? You know, how can I model this ability that he has? Even if he's not answering, you know, modeling questions, I can still sort of unpack it as much as I can myself. So I thought, yeah, this is a really good skill to have, you know, to understand how modeling works, how the brain works, this study of the structure of subjective experience that NLP is. It's still really useful, you know. So when I remember to use it, it's very useful.
Yeah. So are you putting that into practice then? Are you doing that modeling? Yeah. And seeing results yet?
It's a work in progress. I mean, you know, piano playing is a lot of muscle memory, and it's still a lot of practice. I can do a lot of modeling and stay on the right head frame for doing it, but I still need to practice. But nevertheless, I'm sort of unpacking things and stepping it down to say, okay, what's the first step I need to take from here? You know, when Harry's playing like that, you know, what's he doing? It's like, well, he's doing this, this, and this. Okay, well, let me just try this. You know, let me take this one step and see if I can really understand this first step and really be able to do this first step. And it's like, wow, I can't do this first step. Okay, what's the next step? You know, so it's not like happening overnight. You know, say, wow, look at this piano player, I'm going to model him and play like him the next day. But I can
practice is still essential.
Yeah, it is kind of. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so if somebody is interested in becoming a better coach, or maybe even becoming a coach at all, where should they go to get access to your teaching or your community, whatever?
That's an excellent question. The essentialcoachingskills.com website has pretty much every training that I've ever taught, everything I've ever done available on it. So people can learn a ton there. That being said, I don't teach coaching. I'm not a coaching teaching organization. And I don't know who I would recommend to say, you know, go here for coaching. NLP coaching is great. So are other ones. So are other systems for doing that. I think it sort of depends on what is calls you, you know, what is bringing you to it. I adore what I do. I love Ericksonian style, Dobsonian, Neo-Ericksonian hypnosis. You know, I love that approach to being. And the influence that NLP has brought to it and other things that are brought to it. I love that. And then when I'm adding havening to that, it makes it even better. So I would say, find those things if you want to learn how to do those things. And you can find a lot of them at the essentialcoachingskills.com.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much, Doug O'Brien. It's been great to catch up with you after, 15 years, something like that. In fact,
Exactly.
it's probably a longer conversation than we've had since ever, probably.
Probably.
Because you were working, I was a student most times, I think, when that was going on.
Some nice conversations over dinner, that sort of thing. But
yeah.
a lot of other things going on, like please pass the carrots.
Yeah. Okay. Right. See you soon.
See you soon. Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
That's it for this week's podcast. Remember, you can see the show notes for this episode at nlppod.com, and you can download back episodes you may have missed from the online store at webstore.nlppod.com. See you next time.